Ethan Carter dropped the divorce envelope on the kitchen table like a man taking out the trash, and he did it while his wife was still holding the cap and gown she'd waited 7 years to wear. He didn't lower his voice. He didn't wait until after the ceremony. He looked at Olivia Bennett, the woman who'd worked 2 jobs to pay for his MBA, and he said, "After today, maybe you should finally get a normal job." What Ethan didn't know was that in 4 hours, Olivia would sign a document worth $800 million. If you're new here, please subscribe to the channel and stay with me all the way to the end of this one because the ending is going to be worth it. And do me a favor, drop a comment and tell me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Here's what happened. The envelope made almost no sound when it landed. That was the part Olivia would remember later, in the strange way that grief picks its own souvenirs. Not the words, not his face, the sound. A soft, papery little tap against the wood, the same sound a bill makes, or a coupon, or a takeout menu. 7 years of marriage, and it arrived on her kitchen table with less weight than a grocery receipt. She was still holding the gown. It was folded over her left arm, the black polyester slick and cool, and the cap was in her right hand with the tassel dangling between her fingers. She had been about to ask him whether the gold cord went over the shoulders or around the neck. That was the question that had been in her mouth. That was the sentence she'd been building when he walked into the kitchen in a suit that cost more than her first car. "What is this?" she said. "You know what it is. I'm asking you to say it out loud." Ethan sighed. It was a sigh she knew intimately. It was the sigh he used when a waiter got the order wrong when a cab took the long route when his mother called during a game. It was the sound of a man who had been personally inconvenienced by the existence of other people. "They're divorce papers, Olivia. Today. There's never a good time." "Ethan." She set the cap down on the counter very carefully, the way you set down something breakable. "My parents landed at 6 this morning. They're at the hotel right now. My mother is probably ironing her dress. She bought a dress for this. She's 61 years old, and she went to 3 different stores because she wanted the blue one." "I know. They flew across the country." "I know. Then why is this on my table?" He pulled out a chair, sat down, and crossed one leg over the other, and that gesture told her everything. He'd rehearsed this. He'd thought about how he would sit. Somewhere in the last few weeks, in some quiet hour, Ethan Carter had imagined this exact conversation and decided the sitting version played better than the standing version. "Because I'm done pretending," he said. "Pretending what? That this is a marriage." Olivia felt something in her chest go very still. Not break, not shatter. People always said the heart shatters, but that wasn't what it did. It went still, the way an animal goes still when it hears a sound it doesn't recognize. "Say more," she said. "Don't do the thing." "What thing?" "The thing where you go quiet and make me fill the silence." "That's called listening, Ethan. That's called strategy," he said. "You do it in your labs. You do it with your professors. You do it with me. You let people talk until they say something you can use." She almost laughed. Almost. Because he was accusing her of listening the way another man might accuse his wife of stealing. "Okay," she said. "Then let me be direct. Why today?" "Because if I don't do it today, I'll do it tomorrow, and then it's the day after your graduation, and then it's some other day I've ruined." He spread his hands. "There is no clean day, Olivia. There's no calendar square that says good time to end a marriage. You want me to wait until Christmas. Your birthday when? How about any day that isn't the single biggest day of my life?" "See, this is what I mean," he said, and he pointed at her. Actually pointed one finger extended like she was an exhibit. "The biggest day of your life. Do you hear yourself? You're 34 years old, and the biggest day of your life is putting on a costume and walking across a stage so a man you've never met can hand you a piece of paper." The gown was still over her arm. She looked down at it. "It's a doctorate," she said. "It's a piece of paper." "It's 7 years." "That's the problem," Ethan said. "That's exactly the problem. 7 years, Olivia. Do you know what I did in 7 years? I went from analyst to senior executive. I built a client book. I bought this apartment. I have a name in this city. People know who I am when I walk into a room. And you spent those same 7 years in a basement in a lab coat, and at the end of it, you get a hat." Olivia set the gown on the back of the chair. She did it slowly. She had learned a long time ago that when she moved slowly, she stayed calm, and when she stayed calm, she could think. "You bought this apartment," she repeated. "Yes. Say that one more time." Something flickered in his face. It was there, and then it was gone, but she caught it because she'd spent 7 years learning to read that face the way she read data. "I've carried this marriage financially and every other way," he said. "Ethan, who paid for your MBA? That was a long time ago. Who paid for it? We were partners then. Who paid for it, Ethan? Say the sentence." "You contributed. I worked nights at a hospital lab, and I waited tables on weekends, and I did both for 26 months, Olivia said, and her voice didn't rise not once, which somehow made it worse. "I contributed $41,000. I know the number because I still have the ledger. I kept a ledger, Ethan, because I was 27 and terrified, and I wanted to be able to tell myself it was worth it. And I paid you back. You never paid me $1. I paid you back with a life." He gestured at the kitchen at the apartment, at the whole gleaming architecture of it. "Look around. You live here. You've never paid rent on this place. You drive a car I bought. You go to school on loans I co-signed. You co-signed one loan in 2019, and you complained about it for a year. Because it was $30,000, Olivia. You spend that on a watch." The word hung there. She hadn't planned to say it. It arrived on its own and set itself down between them, and for one strange second, neither of them moved. Ethan's jaw tightened. "So that's what this is. Money." "No," Olivia said. "That's what you made it. Every single time. For 7 years, every conversation we've had about my work has somehow become a conversation about money. And every time I ask you about your work, we talk about your vision. Because my work has vision. And mine has what? Mice," he said. There it was. He didn't even flinch when he said it. That was the thing. He said it the way you'd say Tuesday. "Excuse me." "Mice, Olivia, Petri dishes, fluorescent lights, a guy named Marcus who microwaves fish. That's your world. And I have genuinely tried to be excited about it, but I'm 37 years old and I'm going to fundraisers alone. I'm going to my own company's holiday party alone. Do you know what people ask me? They ask, 'Where's your wife?' And I say she's in the lab, and they laugh because they think I'm making a joke. So this is about the parties. It's about a partner." He stood up now because apparently the sitting version had run its course. "I need a partner, Olivia. Not someone who's always chasing another degree. Not someone I have to explain. I need somebody who walks into a room with me and the room gets brighter." Olivia looked at him for a long moment. "And who is she?" she said. The pause lasted 1 full second. 1. But Olivia had spent a decade of her life measuring reactions in milliseconds, and 1 full second was a confession with a bow on it. "There's no one," Ethan said. "Ethan, there's no one. You just told me you need someone who makes the room brighter. That's not a job description. That's a memory. You've already met her. Don't." "What's her name?" I said don't. And then his phone buzzed on the counter, face up, because he'd gotten so comfortable, so certain of his own performance, that he'd forgotten the most basic rule of the thing he was doing. Olivia didn't touch it. She just looked. And the name on the screen was Victoria. And under the name, in that clean gray preview text that shows you exactly enough to destroy you, were 7 words. Did you tell her yet? "Call me." Neither of them said anything. Ethan reached over and turned the phone face down, and the sound of it, that little plastic click against the counter, was somehow louder than everything he'd said in the last 10 minutes. "Victoria," Olivia said, "it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. That's the terrible part, Ethan. It's not even a surprise. It's not even creative." She pressed her fingers against the counter's edge. "How long, Olivia? How long?" 4 months. 4 months. She did the math automatically because her brain did math whether she wanted it to or not. 4 months put it in February. February was when he'd started going to the gym at 5 in the morning. February was when he'd bought the cologne. February was when he'd stopped asking her about her defense date, and she'd been so grateful for the silence that she'd never once wondered why it arrived. "So while I was writing my dissertation," she said, "that's not fair. While I was defending Ethan, in March, you told me you couldn't come because of the Hartley account. There is no Hartley account. I checked your firm's client list a month ago because I wanted to know what to congratulate you about." His face did something then, a small collapse around the eyes. "You checked." "I wanted to be a good wife," Olivia said. "I wanted to walk into one of your parties and be able to say something intelligent about your world. So I read your firm's filings. I read your quarterlies. I learned your org chart. I know who reports to you, and I know who you report to, and I know your firm lost the Prescott mandate in January." She let that sit. "I never said a word, because you would have felt small, and I have spent 7 years making sure you never felt small." Ethan stared at her. "That's not love," he said finally. "That's management." And that, out of everything, was the sentence that landed, because he wasn't entirely wrong. Olivia turned around. She walked to the window. She didn't look out of it, not really. She just needed to not have his face in front of her for 6 seconds while her hands stopped shaking. "You're right," she said quietly. "What?" "You're right. It was management." She turned back around. "But I want you to understand what I was managing, Ethan. I was managing your ego, every day, for 7 years. It was a full-time position, and it did not pay well. Oh, here we go. Do you remember Thanksgiving 2 years ago, your parents' house?" "Olivia, your father asked me what I was working on, and I started to answer, and you said, 'Oh, Dad, don't get her started. She'll talk about cells until the pie's cold,' and everyone laughed, and I laughed too." Her voice caught one small snag, and she pushed through it. "I laughed at myself at your parents' table because it was easier than watching you get uncomfortable." "That was a joke." "That was training," Olivia said. "You trained me, and I let you. That's the part I have to live with. So now I'm the villain." "No," she said. "Now you're just a man in a suit standing in a kitchen at 9:40 in the morning." Ethan's face went red, not from shame, from something closer to insult. Because in his entire architecture of the world, Olivia Bennett was not supposed to be able to talk to him like this. She was supposed to cry. He had prepared for crying. He had, in the version he'd rehearsed, been generous about the crying. He'd planned to be kind. He'd planned to hand her a tissue and say something about how they'd both be happier, and she was supposed to receive that kindness gratefully. The way she received everything. She wasn't crying. "You're being cold," he said. "I'm being quiet. You've never known the difference." "I'm trying to be a decent human being here. You're serving me papers on my graduation day. Because I refuse to lie for one more day." "Then don't lie for one more minute," Olivia said. "Tell me the actual reason, not the partner speech, not the fundraiser speech, the real one. That is the real one." "No, it isn't." She took one step toward him. "Because a man who's leaving out of exhaustion leaves quietly. He leaves on a Tuesday. He leaves when nobody's watching. You're not leaving quietly, Ethan. You're leaving loudly. On the one day my parents will be in the room, on the one day I'd have my name read out loud in front of 2,000 people. Why?" He didn't answer. "Say it. Don't. Say it, Ethan, because I've earned one true sentence." And then he said it. "Because I didn't want to sit there," he said. "Because I didn't want to sit in a folding chair for 3 hours and watch you get something. I didn't want to clap for you. I've been clapping for you for 7 years, and I'm tired of it. And if I'd sat in that chair today, I would have hated you. And I didn't want to hate you, so I did this instead." The kitchen was very quiet. Olivia nodded slowly. "Thank you," she said. "Olivia." "No, I mean it." Her eyes were wet now, but her voice was the steadiest it had been all morning. "That's the first honest thing you've said in 4 months. You didn't leave because I was too small, Ethan. You left because I was about to get bigger, and you couldn't be in the room for it." "That's not what I said." "That's exactly what you said. You just said it with better manners." He grabbed his phone. He grabbed his keys. And in the doorway, because men like Ethan Carter can never leave a room without taking one last thing with them, he turned around. "You'll be fine," he said. "You always land somewhere. Get a normal job, take a year, teach maybe. You'd be good at teaching. Get out. I'm being kind." "Ethan," she said his name almost gently. "Get out of my house." He almost corrected her. She watched him almost do it. "My house," he wanted to say, but something in her face made him swallow it, and that was the first time in 7 years that Ethan Carter didn't finish a sentence, and he would think about that moment more than any other later when he had a great deal of time to think. The door closed. Olivia stood alone in the kitchen for 11 seconds. She counted them. She had no idea why she counted them. Then her phone rang. She looked at the screen and saw the name, and something in her chest reorganized itself the way a room does when someone turns on a light. She picked up. Marcus. Dr. Bennett. Her attorney's voice dry as paper. Are you sitting down? No. Sit down. Marcus, I've had a morning. You're about to have a better one. A pause. She could hear him shuffling. Chimera confirmed. 11 o'clock. Blackwell's in the room himself. And Olivia, I need you to hear the number from me and not from a term sheet because I want to hear your voice when I say it. Say it. 800. Olivia's hand found the counter. Say the whole thing, she said. $800 million, Marcus said. For Bennett Biosolutions, full acquisition, you retain a controlling equity stake in the successor entity. You retain the chair of the research board. They didn't counter. Olivia, they didn't even counter. They came in at the ask. She didn't say anything. Olivia, I'm here. Are you crying? A little? That's allowed. I'm not crying about the money. There was a pause on the line. Marcus Reyes had known her for 2 years. He had watched her build a company out of a closet and a laptop, and a level of stubbornness that frankly alarmed him. What's going on? He said. Ethan filed for divorce this morning. The silence on the line went on so long she checked to see if the call had dropped. Marcus, when? He said. And his voice had changed completely. It had gone flat and precise, the voice of a man who bills by the hour and has just understood exactly which hour matters. An hour ago. He put the papers on the table an hour ago. No, not when did he hand them to you. When did he file? Olivia looked at the envelope on the table. She hadn't opened it. She walked over. She picked it up. Her fingers were steadier than she expected. She slid one nail under the flap and pulled the papers out, and there in the corner of the first page was a small rectangular stamp, and inside the stamp was a date, and inside the date was a time. 8:47 a.m. She read it 3 times. Marcus, she said slowly. It's stamped. He filed it this morning. 8:47. Marcus Reyes said one word, and it wasn't a word he usually said in front of clients. Olivia, he said, do you understand what he just did? Tell me. He just closed the window. He filed before the signing, before the valuation event. He filed while your company was on paper a research entity with negative revenue and 1 provisional patent. She could hear him standing up. She could hear a chair scrape. Olivia, if he had waited 9 hours. 9 hours. If he'd sat in that folding chair and clapped for you and gone home and filed tomorrow morning, we would be having a very different conversation right now, and I would be having a very bad week. Olivia sat down. She sat down in the chair he'd been sitting in, the one he'd pulled out so carefully, the one he'd rehearsed. He didn't want to clap for me, she said. What? Nothing. She wiped her face with the back of her wrist. Nothing. It's not important. Olivia, listen to me carefully. Say nothing to him, not a word. Do not tell him about 11 o'clock. Do not tell him about Chimera. If he calls, if he texts, if he shows up, you send it to me. Do you understand? He's not going to call. He's going to call, Marcus said. The second this hits a screen, he's going to call, and I want to be the one who answers. She hung up. And then Olivia Bennett sat in her husband's chair in her husband's kitchen for a full minute, holding a piece of paper stamped 8:47 a.m., and she began to laugh. It wasn't a nice laugh. It wasn't triumphant. It came out cracked and wet and half a sob, and it went on longer than she wanted it to. And when it finally stopped, she was shaking so hard she had to put both palms flat on the table. Because here was the thing nobody was ever going to understand. She would have given it to him. That was what would haunt her at 2 a.m. for the next year. If Ethan had walked into that kitchen and said, I'm scared, I feel small, I don't know who I am next to you, she would have handed him half. She wouldn't have even hesitated. She'd have signed anything he put in front of her because that was what she'd done for 7 years. She had been handing him half of everything since she was 27 years old, and he'd never once noticed because he'd been too busy being generous with her. He didn't lose $400 million because she was clever. He lost it because he couldn't sit in a chair. The phone buzzed. A text from her mother. We're at the hotel. Dad ironed his shirt twice. Should we meet you and Ethan there or at the gate? Mom is very excited. This is Mom. Olivia looked at that message for a long time. Then she typed, deleted, typed again, and finally sent meet me at the gate. Just the three of us. I'll explain. 3 dots appeared, vanished, appeared again. Okay, honey. 2 words. But her mother had never once in her life sent a 2-word text, and Olivia understood that a woman 61 years old, standing in a hotel room in a blue dress she'd bought at the 3rd store, had just read between the lines of 9 words and known. Olivia stood up. She walked down the hall into the bedroom, and she stopped in front of the closet. It was the ordinary closet, the one on the left, the one Ethan had never opened, not once in the entire time they'd lived there, because it held her clothes, and her clothes bored him. She pushed the hangers aside. Old cardigans. The gray one with the hole in the elbow that he'd told her twice made her look like a substitute teacher. The winter coat from grad school. A row of soft, unremarkable, invisible things. And behind them, pressed flat against the back wall in a garment bag, hanging exactly where it had hung for 11 months, was a charcoal suit that had been made for her by a woman on the Lower East Side who had taken her measurements and said, "Honey, this is armor." And Olivia had said, "I know." Below it, in a hard shell case, a laptop that had never once been on the apartment's wireless network. Below that, a banker's box, provisional patents, 16 of them. Investor correspondence going back 26 months. A term sheet from a Boston fund she'd turned down. A cease and desist from a competitor that had tried to poach her postdoc. The entire invisible second life of a woman her husband thought spent her days with mice. Olivia stood in front of it with her hand on the garment bag, and she thought about all the nights she'd come home at 11, having just gotten off a call with a man in Zurich, and Ethan had looked up from the couch and said, "Long day at the lab," and she'd said yes. She'd said yes. For 2 years. She had lied to her husband every single day, and the lie was this: I am smaller than I am. She had told it out of love. That's what she told herself. She'd told it because she'd seen what happened to his face on the night his firm passed him over, and she'd decided in that moment that she would rather be underestimated by him than watch him be diminished by her. It had felt noble at the time. It had felt like the highest kind of love, a love that carries the weight quietly. Standing there with her hand on the garment bag, Olivia finally understood the truth, and it was uglier and simpler than anything she'd built. It wasn't love. It was fear. She had been afraid that if he ever saw her at full size, he would leave. And he'd left anyway. He'd left at 8:47 in the morning over a woman named Victoria and a folding chair. Olivia unzipped the garment bag. "Okay," she said out loud to nobody in an empty apartment on a Thursday morning. Her voice cracked on the second syllable, and she said it again, and the second time it held. "Okay." She took the suit off the hanger. She laid it on the bed next to the cap and gown, and for one moment those two things sat side by side, the costume he'd mocked and the armor he'd never seen, and Olivia Bennett looked at them both. Then she picked up her phone and called Marcus back. He answered on the first ring. "Change of plan," she said. "Olivia, we do not have time for a change of plan. Move the meeting to noon." "What? Why?" "Because at 11 o'clock, Olivia said, I'm going to be walking across a stage, and my mother's going to be in the 3rd row in a blue dress, and they're going to read my name into a microphone in front of 2,000 people, and they're going to say the word doctor in front of it." Marcus was quiet. "And I'm not missing it," she said. "Not for $800 million, not for $800 billion. I've paid for that 30 seconds with 7 years of my life, and I'm going to stand there and take it." "Olivia, Blackwell doesn't move meetings." "Then tell him this," she said. "Tell him Dr. Bennett will see him at noon." And she hung up before he could argue, and she stood in a quiet bedroom holding a suit that fit her exactly, and for the first time in 7 years, Olivia Bennett did not make herself smaller. It was 9:52 in the morning when the phone rang again, and Olivia knew from the first syllable that Marcus Reyes had spent the last 4 minutes losing an argument. "He said no," Marcus said. "Okay." "Olivia, when I say no, I want you to understand the texture of the no. Julian Blackwell has not moved a meeting since 2011. His assistant laughed at me, out loud, into a telephone. Then we'll do it at noon anyway. That's not how it works. Marcus, what's the number on the term sheet? You know the number. Say it. 800 million. And who owns the patents? There was a pause. You do. So the meeting's at noon, Olivia said, unless Julian Blackwell has decided that $800 million is less important to him than his lunch. Marcus made a sound that was not quite a laugh. You've been a client for 2 years, and I have never once heard you talk like this. I know. What happened? A man put an envelope on my table, she said, and I stopped apologizing. He called back at 9:58, 6 minutes. She counted those too. Noon, Marcus said, and he sounded stunned in a way that made her chest go tight. Blackwell said noon, but Olivia, he said something else, and I need you to hear it exactly the way he said it, because I've been doing this for 19 years and I don't know what it means. Say it. He said tell her she gets 40 minutes instead of 2 hours, and tell her I want to know what she thinks is worth more than $800 million. Olivia stood very still in her bedroom with the garment bag open behind her. That's not a negotiation, Marcus said. That's a test. He's asking you to justify it, and if you walk in there and say something soft, something about family, something about a hat and a stage, he is going to eat you alive in front of 9 executives. Then I won't say something soft. What are you going to say? I'll tell you at 12:40, Olivia said, and hung up. She got downstairs at 10:04. She had the gown over one arm and the garment bag over the other, and the doorman, a man named Hector, who had worked that building for 11 years, looked at her and then looked at the 2 bags and did the arithmetic on his face. Dr. Bennett, he said. She stopped. What? Today's the day, right? You told me in March. You said May 15th. He was smiling. He had no idea. So I've been calling you that since March, in my head. I figured today I'd say it out loud. Olivia Bennett had held it together through a divorce, a phone call, and a closet. She lost it in a lobby in front of a man in a gray uniform at 4 minutes past 10 in the morning. Oh, Hector said, alarmed. Oh no, I'm sorry. You're the first, she said, wiping her face with the heel of her hand. You're the first person to say it out loud. Her parents were standing at the north gate at 10:19, and her mother saw her from 40 feet away and started walking, and by 20 feet she was walking fast, and Olivia watched Diane Bennett cross that last stretch of sidewalk in a blue dress bought at the third store and understood that the 2-word text had said everything. Where is he? Diane said, not a question. Mom? Olivia Grace, where is he? He's gone. Her father hadn't moved. Ray Bennett was 64 years old. He'd spent 31 of them at a machine shop in Ohio, and he had a way of going completely still that his daughter had inherited without ever knowing where it came from. Gone where? He said. He filed this morning, Olivia said. Divorce. He put the papers on the table at 9 o'clock and left. Ray looked at the sidewalk. He nodded once slowly the way men do when they're deciding something. Dad? I'd like his phone number. Dad, I have never asked you for anything in your life, Ray said, and his voice was perfectly level, which was the frightening part. I'm asking for a phone number. Ray, Diane said. 30 seconds. I want 30 seconds. You'll get nothing out of him, Olivia said. I promise you. I had an hour and I got one true sentence and it cost me everything I had. That stopped him. What sentence? Olivia looked at her father, and she thought about lying, and then she didn't, because she'd just decided in a bedroom that she was finished making herself smaller, and it turned out the decision applied to everyone. He said he didn't want to sit in a folding chair and clap for me, she said. He said if he had to watch me get something today, he'd have hated me. So he did this instead. Ray Bennett's jaw moved once. Okay, he said quietly. Dad. No, that's fine. He pulled at his shirt collar. He'd ironed it twice. That's fine. That's a man telling you exactly who he is. Most of them never do you the courtesy. And then Diane said, There's a woman. Olivia turned. Her mother's face had gone a color Olivia had never seen on it before. Mom, is there a woman? Her name's Victoria, Olivia said. 4 months. And Diane Bennett closed her eyes. It lasted maybe a second and a half. But Olivia had spent 10 years of her life measuring reactions, and she read that one before her mother's mouth even opened. "You knew," Olivia said. "No." "Mom." "I didn't know. You just closed your eyes. People don't close their eyes at news. They close their eyes at confirmation." Her voice came out strange and flat. "What did you see?" Her mother's hands were shaking. "Christmas." "What about Christmas?" His phone was on the counter. Diane's chin came up, and there were tears standing in her eyes, and she refused to let them fall in the middle of a sidewalk. "I was doing dishes. It lit up. It said, 'I miss you,' and there was a heart, and it was a woman's name, and it wasn't yours." The world went very quiet. "That was December," Olivia said. "I know what month it was." "That was 5 months ago." "I know." "Mom?" Olivia's voice cracked straight down the middle. "You had 5 months." "And what was I supposed to say?" Diane said. And now the tears came, and she let them right there at the north gate at 22 past 10 in the morning. "You were 3 weeks from your defense. 3 weeks, Olivia. You called me crying at midnight because a machine broke. A machine. You were held together with tape and coffee, and you were 3 weeks out, and I looked at that phone and I thought, if I say this to her right now, she doesn't finish. That wasn't your choice to make." "I know that." "That was mine." "I know that." Her mother's face was wrecked. "I've known it every single day since December. I've picked up the phone about 100 times. And every time I put it down, I told myself 3 more weeks. 3 more weeks, she can have this one thing first." Olivia stood there on the sidewalk with a gown over one arm and $800 million sitting in an office 30 blocks south. And she started to laugh, and it came out horrible. "Olivia," her father said. "No, it's just—" She pressed her hand over her mouth. "It's just funny. It's funny, Mom, because that's what I did to him." "What?" "For 2 years." She was still laughing, and it was still horrible. "I hid things from Ethan because I decided he couldn't handle them. I decided for him. I made myself the manager of what he was allowed to know, and I called it love. And this whole time you were doing the exact same thing to me and calling it the same word." Diane Bennett had no answer for that. Neither did Olivia. They stood there for 10 seconds, 3 people on a sidewalk, and then Ray Bennett said the only thing anyone could have said. "We're going to be late." The ceremony started at 11. Olivia sat in a folding chair in the 14th row of the biomedical engineering doctoral candidates with a phone buzzing in the pocket of a gown that had no pockets, which meant she'd had to hold it against her thigh through the entire provost's address. And it went off at 11:06, and she looked down. It was Ethan. "Hey, I know today's rough. Just want to say I'm not trying to be a jerk about any of this. Also, we should probably talk about the apartment situation this week. No rush." She read it 3 times. The apartment situation. At 11:09, it buzzed again. "Not this week. Whenever. I'm not in a hurry. Just want to be adults about it." And at 11:11, "For what it's worth, congratulations." Olivia Bennett sat in a folding chair in a black gown surrounded by 200 people about to have the word doctor put in front of their names. And she stared at that last message. And she understood something that she would spend the next year trying to explain to people, and failing. He meant it. That was the thing. That was the part nobody believed when she told it later. Ethan Carter, genuinely, sincerely in his own heart, believed he was being a decent man. He'd filed at 8:47, told her at 9, said the cruelest sentence of his life at 9:20, and by 11:11 he had constructed a version of the morning in which he was gracious. He'd already edited it. He was already the guy who handled a hard thing with class. She turned the phone face down against her leg. Marcus called at 11:14 and she declined it. He called again at 11:15. She declined it. He texted, "Answer." She whispered, "Excuse me," to a man named Priyansh, who had sat next to her at every single seminar for 4 years, walked up the side aisle bent at the waist like she was avoiding gunfire, got into the corridor behind the stage, and answered, "I'm at my graduation. There's a problem with the reps." Marcus. "Clean title," he said. "Chimera's counsel added a clause overnight, and I got it at 10:40, and I've been reading it for half an hour, and I need you to listen." She heard paper. They want a representation that no third party has a marital or community claim against the assets. Standard on its face. It's boilerplate for founder acquisitions. So it's a Rep Olivia. You sign it, you're personally liable for it. If it's wrong, they claw back and they sue you personally, and I mean the house, the car, the future, everything. It has to be true at the moment of signature, and it has to stay true. Olivia leaned against a cinder block wall in a black gown. It is true, she said. He filed at 8:47. That's what makes it true. That stamp is the only reason we have a deal today. That stamp is worth $400 million. Marcus took a breath. And Olivia, a filing can be withdrawn. The corridor got very small. Say that again. He filed it. He hasn't served it. Until it's served and the clock runs, it's a piece of paper he can walk into a courthouse and pull back. And if he pulls it back before noon, then at noon, you are a married woman signing away $800 million of marital property in a community claim state, and I will not let you put your name on that page. I'll walk out of the room and take you with me. He's not going to withdraw it. He will if he finds out. He won't find out. Nobody knows. Olivia, Marcus's voice dropped. The university press office called Chimera's comms desk at 10:15 this morning. Everything stopped. What? They want a photo, distinguished alumna, doctoral candidate, industry, partnership, whatever. Somebody over there is very proud of you and very excited, and they made a phone call, and Chimera's comms desk called their legal desk, and their legal desk called me, and I have spent the last 40 minutes on the phone with a 29-year-old associate begging her to sit on it until 12:40. Did she agree? She agreed. Then we're fine. She agreed at 10:52, Marcus said. And at 11:04, a wire service reporter emailed her asking to confirm a rumored biotech transaction in the 8 to 9 figure range closing today in Manhattan. Olivia put her hand flat against the cinder block. Somebody leaked, she said. Somebody always leaks. 9 executives, 4 lawyers, a comms desk, and a proud university. It was never a secret, it was a head start. She heard him moving. Olivia, we have about 90 minutes before your name is on a screen somewhere. Ethan Carter works in finance. He has an alert app. Everybody in that business has an alert app. The second Bennett hits a wire he knows, and if he's smart, and I have to assume he's smart, he is in a cab to the courthouse by 12:05. Behind her, through the door, muffled, she heard a name being read into a microphone. Then applause. Then another name. They were on the bees. Marcus, she said, how long does it take to withdraw a filing? On a good day with a hungry lawyer, 40 minutes. And how long does it take to walk across a stage? Olivia, answer the question. I don't know, 90 seconds. Then I've got time, she said, and hung up and walked back into the auditorium and sat down next to Priyansh, who leaned over and whispered, Everything okay? No, Olivia said. Anything I can do? Yeah. She squeezed his hand. Clap loud. They called her at 11:38. Olivia Grace Bennett, Doctor of Philosophy, Biomedical Engineering. And she stood up, and her legs worked, which surprised her, and she walked up 5 steps and across a stage that was maybe 40 feet wide, and it took 11 seconds. And in those 11 seconds, Olivia Bennett heard exactly one thing over 2,000 people. Her father, Ray Bennett, 64 years old, 31 years in a machine shop, a man who had not raised his voice in his own house in 2 decades, stood up in the 3rd row and yelled his daughter's name like it was the last word he'd ever get to say. And Diane Bennett stood up next to him in a blue dress from the 3rd store. And Olivia took the leather folder in her left hand and shook a stranger's hand with her right, and she looked out at 2,000 people and found the 2 of them in the 3rd row. And that was it. That was the whole thing. That was the entire 7 years. 11 seconds. She would have missed it for nothing. Not for 800 million, not for 800 billion. She was in a bathroom on the 2nd floor of the engineering building at 11:44 with a garment bag hanging off a stall hook. The gown came off. The old cardigan came off, the gray one with the hole in the elbow, the one he'd told her twice made her look like a substitute teacher. She folded it. She didn't throw it away. She'd think about that later and never fully understand it. The suit went on. It was charcoal, and it had been cut for her body by a woman on the Lower East Side who'd taken her measurements 11 months ago and said, Honey, this is armor. And Olivia had said, I know. She'd hung it in the back of a closet for 11 months. She'd taken it out exactly twice, both times, at 2 in the morning, both times just to look at it. She came out of the stall and stood in front of the mirror at 11:49 and did not recognize the woman in it, and then a second later she did. That was the thing that got her. She'd expected a stranger. It was her. It was the version of her that had been standing behind those cardigans for 2 years, waiting for permission. And Olivia stood there in a university bathroom and thought about 7 years of somebody telling her she was a woman who worked with mice. And the worst part, the absolutely unforgivable part, was that she'd believed him. Not out loud, not consciously. But there had been a night in February when Zurich had called at 11, and a man with a European accent had said the words 9 figures, and Olivia had hung up the phone and sat on the edge of the bathtub in the dark and thought they've made a mistake. That's what he'd done to her. 7 years and a man had built a room inside her head where a 9-figure phone call felt like a clerical error. Her mother was waiting outside the bathroom door. Diane looked at the suit for a long moment. She didn't ask. "Where are you going?" she said. "Midtown." "For what?" Olivia hesitated, and then she said it because there was nobody left to protect. "To sell my company," she said, "for $800 million at noon." Diane Bennett did not react for approximately 4 seconds. Then she said, "Say that again." "Mom, say the number again." $800 million. Her mother put one hand on the wall. "Since when?" she whispered. 2 years. 2 years? "I built it in a closet, Mom." Olivia's voice came apart just slightly. "I built a company in a closet in my own apartment, and my husband thought I was doing homework." Diane looked at her daughter in a charcoal suit in a fluorescent hallway. "He never knew," she said. "No, he never knew," Diane repeated, and something in her face went strange and terrible and almost joyful, and she started to laugh, and then she covered her mouth with both hands. "Oh, honey, oh, that man, that poor stupid man." "Mom, he walked out on $800 million because he didn't want to sit in a chair." "I have to go." "Olivia." Her mother caught her arm. "Wait, why didn't you tell him?" And Olivia stopped in a hallway at 11:52 in the morning and gave the honest answer for the second time that day, and it was the harder one. "Because I thought if he ever saw all of me," she said, "he'd leave." Diane's eyes filled. "And he left anyway," Olivia said. The car got her to the Chimera building at 11:58. Marcus was on the sidewalk. He had his phone in one hand, and his tie was crooked, and he was a man who had been vertical since 6 a.m. "The reporter's holding," he said, walking backward through the revolving door in front of her, which nearly killed him. "Nothing on the wires yet. Nothing. Comms is sitting on the photo. We have a window. Olivia, listen to me. 40 minutes. He gave you 40 minutes. Blackwell will spend the first 10 trying to find out if you're a scientist who plays businesswoman or a businesswoman who happens to be a scientist, and whatever you do, do not tell him about this morning." "Why not?" "Because he'll price it." Marcus stopped dead in the lobby and looked at her. "Olivia, that man has spent 30 years finding the soft spot. If he knows your husband walked out of your kitchen 4 hours ago, he will know to the dollar exactly how badly you need to win today, and he'll take it out of the number." They rode up in silence to the 39th floor. She walked into that room at 12:01, and there were 9 people around a table, and every single one of them looked up. And Olivia understood in half a second what they'd been expecting, because she'd seen the same faces at every conference she'd ever presented at. They'd been expecting a scientist, someone in a cardigan. Julian Blackwell sat at the far end. He was 61 silver in a suit that made Ethan's look like a costume rental, and he did not stand up, and he did not smile, and he watched her walk the entire length of that table with the flat, patient interest of a man watching an animal decide whether to run. "Dr. Bennett," he said, "Mr. Blackwell. You moved my meeting." "I did." "Nobody moves my meeting." "Then it's a good thing you said yes," Olivia said, "because otherwise you'd have found out you were wrong about that in a much more expensive way." Somebody at the middle of the table made a noise, a very small one. Julian Blackwell's eyes did not leave her face. "Sit down," he said. "I'll stand for a minute." "Why?" "Because you asked me a question through my attorney," Olivia said, "and I'd like to answer it standing up." The room went absolutely silent. 9 people. Not one of them moved. "Go ahead," Blackwell said. You asked what I thought was worth more than $800 million. Olivia put both hands on the back of the empty chair. The answer is 11 seconds. That's how long it took me to walk across a stage this morning. My father stood up in the third row and shouted my name. My mother bought a dress at 3 different stores because she wanted the blue one. Her voice was completely steady. You could not have bought those 11 seconds from me for any number you're capable of writing down, and I want you to sit with that for a moment, Mr. Blackwell, because in about 30 minutes you're going to try to tell me what my work is worth, and I need you to already know that you and I use very different currencies. Nobody breathed. Julian Blackwell leaned back in his chair. You're asking us to put $800 million into a company run by a woman with no corporate history, he said. No board experience, no P&L, nothing. You defended a dissertation 9 weeks ago. Yes. So make the case. You're not buying my experience, Olivia said. You're buying 26 months of a woman working from midnight to 4 in the morning on something every single person in her life told her was a hobby. You're not buying a resume, Mr. Blackwell. You're buying the only thing on earth that can't be hired, which is somebody who kept going when there was no reason to. That's a speech. That's a moat. Blackwell's eyebrow moved 1 millimeter. Explain. You can hire experience, she said. You've got 40 people in this building with better resumes than mine, and not one of them has what's in that patent stack, and you know it because you've had it for 6 weeks and you didn't counter. She let that sit. You came in at the Ask Mr. Blackwell, 800 no-counter first pass. In 30 years, how many times have you done that? The silence went on for 4 full seconds. Twice, he said. Then let's stop pretending you're deciding, Olivia said, and start talking about terms. And Julian Blackwell laughed. It was a real one. It came out of him like it surprised him, and every person at that table turned their head, and a woman near the middle actually put her pen down. Sit down, Dr. Bennett, he said. Please. She sat. You're right, he said. We didn't counter. Do you want to know why? I assume because the science holds. The science holds. That's not why. Blackwell reached to his left, and a man in a blue tie handed him a folder, and Blackwell slid it down the length of the table, and it came to a stop under Olivia's hand. We didn't counter because 6 weeks ago I put your company through an outside diligence firm. Standard practice. I don't buy anything without a second pair of eyes. Olivia opened the folder. They gave us a pass recommendation, Blackwell said. Not a buy, a pass. Their team looked at Bennett Biosolutions, and they wrote 3 paragraphs, and they told me not to waste my time, and I bought it anyway because I read those 3 paragraphs, and I decided that whoever wrote them was the stupidest man in New York. Olivia was looking at page 1. She wasn't hearing him anymore, because at the bottom of the page, under 3 short paragraphs recommending that Chimera Biotech decline all further consideration of a research entity called Bennett Biosolutions, on the grounds that its founder was, and the memo used this exact phrase, an academic with no commercial instinct, there were 2 initials in the reviewer's box, EC and a date, March 4th. The same week, he'd told her he couldn't come to her defense because of the Hartley account. Dr. Bennett, Blackwell said. Olivia did not look up. Who wrote this? She said. Some senior guy at Haller & Voss. Why? And Olivia Bennett sat in a chair on the 39th floor with her husband's initials under her thumb and understood that Ethan Carter had held her entire life in his hands on paper with her name printed at the top of it, and he had not even read it closely enough to recognize her. She didn't look up for 11 seconds. She knew it was 11 because she counted them the same way she'd counted the walk across the stage, the same way she'd counted the silence in her kitchen after the door closed. Her brain had apparently decided that today was a day for counting. Dr. Bennett, Julian Blackwell said again, give me a second. I've given you 4. Then give me 4 more. Nobody at that table had ever heard anyone talk to Julian Blackwell that way. And the 9 of them sat very still while a woman in a charcoal suit read 3 paragraphs about herself. The memo was dated March 4th. It was 1,100 words, which was nothing, which was less than she'd written in a single footnote of her dissertation. Haller & Voss Strategic Advisory. Prepared at the request of Chimera Biotech. Subject entity, Bennett Biosolutions, LLC. And then 3 paragraphs, and the third one said that while the underlying science presented moderate theoretical interest, the entity was operationally unserious, capital naive, and directed by an academic with no commercial instinct, and that the reviewing team recommended Chimera decline all further consideration. Reviewer's initials. EC. Olivia closed the folder. "Who's Halloran Voss?" she said. "Advisory shop," said the man in the blue tie. "Midtown. We use them for second looks on anything over 100 million. Do you use them often? 6-7 times a year. And how often do you ignore them?" Blackwell said, "Never." Olivia looked up. "Never," he repeated. "Until March 5th. Why?" "Because I read the 3rd paragraph." Blackwell laced his fingers on the table. "Dr. Bennett, I've been doing this since before you could drive. I've read 4,000 diligence memos, and a bad memo has numbers in it. A bad memo says the burn rate is wrong, or the patent's thin, or the founder's a liar. This one had adjectives." He tipped his chin at the folder under her hand. 1,100 words about your company and not one number. Whoever wrote that didn't do the work. He had a feeling, and he dressed it up. Somebody down the table shifted. "So I called them," Blackwell went on. "I said who ran this. They said a senior guy, very good big book, and I said I'd like to speak with him, and they said he was on a plane, and I said fine, and I hung up, and I bought your company anyway." He almost smiled. "It's the only time I've ever paid full ask on something a diligence firm told me to walk away from. My board thinks I've lost my mind." "And have you—" "I don't know yet," Blackwell said. "That's what the next 34 minutes are for." Olivia put her hand flat on the folder. Marcus was 2 seats down, and she could feel him looking at her, and she knew exactly what he was thinking, because he'd said it to her in a lobby 11 minutes ago. "Do not tell him about this morning. He'll price it." She slid the folder back down the table. "Let's talk about terms," she said. At 12:09, Blackwell put his first knife on the table, and he did it so smoothly that half the people in the room didn't notice it was a knife. "Structure," he said. 800 is offered. 450 at close 350 over 30 months against clinical milestones. You take 12% of the successor entity. You chair the research board. For how long? Excuse me. You said I chair the research board, Olivia said. You didn't say for how long. The room got quiet in a way that told her she'd found it on the first try. Blackwell's face didn't change. 18 months. Then the board reconstitutes and appoints a chair by vote. No. Dr. Bennett. You just told me you paid full ask because I'm the only person alive who kept going when there was no reason to, Olivia said. And then 18 months later, you'd like the option to vote me out of my own laboratory. That's governance. That's an exit ramp. She leaned forward. Mr. Blackwell, you're not worried about my science. You're worried about the same thing everybody in this business is worried about, which is that founders are difficult and boards are tidy. You want the moat without the woman who dug it. Founders leave, Blackwell said. It's not personal. 70% of them are gone in 3 years. They get bored, they get rich, they buy a boat. I don't want a boat. They all say that. I've had $800 million available to me for 6 weeks, Olivia said. And I spent last night in a lab at 2 a.m. fixing a sensor that costs $40. Nobody said anything. Ask your comms desk, she said. I know they called my university this morning. Ask them what my badge access log looks like. 2 years, Mr. Blackwell. Not one Sunday off. Not one. Blackwell studied her. 36 months, he said. 60. 48. 48 plus the chair seat is contractual and not board revocable, plus I hold a veto on any change to the research program's clinical direction for the same term. That's not a veto, that's a crown. It's a lock on the door, Olivia said. You've bought the house. I'm keeping a key to one room. Blackwell looked at the ceiling for exactly as long as it takes to decide something. Done, he said. And the woman in the middle of the table put her pen down for the second time in 12 minutes. At 12:22, Marcus's phone lit up on the table, and he looked at it, and his whole face went the color of paper. Excuse me, he said and stood up. Sit down, counselor, Blackwell said mildly. I have to take this. Sit down. Marcus sat down, and he didn't take it, and Olivia watched him place the phone face down with the deliberate care of a man handling a live wire. What? She said. Nothing. Marcus. It's nothing, Blackwell said without inflection. It's the wire. Both of them looked at him. It's the wire, he repeated. Reuters, probably. Maybe Bloomberg. They've had it since about 11. My comms desk has been standing on it all morning, and there's a limit to how long you can stand on a thing before it comes out from under your foot. He shrugged one shoulder. Dr. Bennett, that's why you got 40 minutes. Not because I'm cruel. Because at some point in the next half hour, the entire world finds out what we're doing in this room. And I'd very much like us to be finished when it does. Why? Because a deal that isn't signed when it hits a screen isn't a deal, Blackwell said. It's an invitation. It's every private equity shop in the city calling you by dinner. It's my share price moving before my signature's dry. It's chaos. He looked at her. And because in my experience, Dr. Bennett, when news arrives before ink, somebody always turns up who thinks they're owed a piece. Olivia's hand went still on the table. Marcus said very quietly, Julian, nothing. Blackwell's eyes moved from Marcus to Olivia and back to Marcus and stayed there for one full second, and Olivia understood in that second exactly how a man gets to sit at the end of a table like that for 30 years. Let's keep going, Blackwell said. At 12:31, they hit the reps. The man in the blue tie read them aloud because that's how Chimera did it, and it took him 4 minutes, and Olivia listened to a stranger recite the contents of her life in the flat voice of a man reading a departure board. Clean title to the 16 provisionals, no prior assignment, no encumbrance, no pledged collateral, no undisclosed licensing, no litigation pending or threatened, and then he got to the 14th one. No third party holds or may assert a marital community property or spousal claim to the assets in whole or in part as of the moment of execution. Nobody in that room reacted because to them it was line 14 of 31. Marcus's knuckles went white on his pen. Olivia sat very still. Question, she said. Go ahead, said Blue Tie. When you say as of the moment of execution. Signature. Down to the minute. The instrument's time-stamped. And if it changed an hour later? The man looked up mildly puzzled. Then it changed an hour later. It's a snapshot, Rep. It has to be true when you sign it. What happens after is a different conversation. And if it's not true when I sign it, then we unwind the transaction and sue you personally for the value of the misrepresentation. He said it pleasantly the way you'd describe a parking policy. But that's boilerplate Dr. Bennett. Everybody signs it. It's there because of a mess in 2014 in California. Some founder's wife turned up 18 months after close. Right, Olivia said. You're not married, are you? He said. And he said it without looking up. And he said it because he was reading, and he asked it the way people ask if you want the receipt. The room did not stop. Nobody heard it happen. That was the strange part. 9 people at a table, and the single most dangerous question of Olivia Bennett's life went across it like a dropped napkin. Marcus opened his mouth. I filed this morning, Olivia said. Marcus closed his mouth. Blue Tie looked up. You filed. My husband filed at 8:47 this morning. The petition's stamped. I have a photograph of the stamp on my phone. Filed or served? Filed. The man's pen stopped, and that finally was the moment the room noticed. Because when the associate stops writing, everybody feels it, and 11 heads came up at once, and Julian Blackwell at the far end of the table leaned forward maybe 2 inches. Say that again, Blackwell said. Julian, Marcus said. Can I have 5 minutes with my client? No, Blackwell said. Dr. Bennett, Olivia put both hands flat on the table. She had 11 seconds to decide, and she used 4 of them, and what she thought about in those 4 seconds was not the money. She thought about a woman standing in a hallway saying 3 more weeks she can have this one thing first. She thought about a man on a couch saying long day at the lab, and a woman saying yes. She thought about 2 years of shrinking herself into a shape that fit inside somebody's comfort, and how the entire architecture of the worst morning of her life had been built brick by brick out of information withheld out of love. She was so tired of managing what men were allowed to know. My husband served me divorce papers at 9 o'clock this morning, she said, on the day of my doctoral graduation 4 hours ago in my kitchen. He filed them at 8:47. That's 13 minutes before he told me. He filed first, and then he came and told me. He'd already done it, and then he sat down in a chair and explained to me that he needed a partner, and not someone who was always chasing another degree, and then he told me to get a normal job. The silence in that room was total. So the answer to your question, Olivia said, is that as of this moment and for reasons that had nothing whatsoever to do with this transaction, the 14th representation is true, and I will sign it, and I will sign it today, and I would appreciate it if we moved along, because I have not eaten anything since yesterday, and I would like to go find my mother. Nobody moved. Then Julian Blackwell said, Counselor, is she liable if he withdraws it after signature? Marcus Horse, no. It's a snapshot rep. Your own man just said so. He did. Blackwell turned to Blue Tie. Didn't you? I did, Daw, said Blue Tie, who was 29 years old and had gone slightly gray. Then we're fine, Blackwell said and leaned back. And then he did something Olivia did not expect and would think about for years. He said, Dr. Bennett, do you want a minute? No. Take a minute. I said no. I'm not offering out of kindness, Blackwell said. I'm offering because you just told 9 strangers something that cost you, and I've watched a lot of people say a thing like that and then negotiate badly for 20 minutes afterward because their hands were shaking and they didn't want anyone to see. So take the minute. Nobody at this table is going to price it. I give you my word. Olivia looked down the length of the table at him. Why? She said. Because I paid full ask, Blackwell said, and I'd like to know what I bought. She took the minute. She spent it looking at the folder. And that's when she saw it at 12:39, because when your hands are shaking, you look for something to do with them, and what she did with hers was open the folder one more time and turn to the second page, which she hadn't read because she'd stopped at 2 initials on page 1. Page 2 was an internal cover sheet. Halloran-Voss Engagement Protocol, Conflict Screening. And there were 4 boxes, and 3 of them were checked no, and the 4th one said, does the reviewer have any personal, familial, or financial relationship with the subject entity or its principals? And it was checked yes. And underneath it on a line marked Disclosure in blue ink in handwriting, Olivia Bennett had seen on 7 years of birthday cards and 1 mortgage application and a divorce petition filed at 8:47 that morning were 9 words. Subject's founder is my spouse. No material influence. Waved. Olivia stopped breathing. Dr. Bennett. She read it again. Subject's founder is my spouse. He knew. He'd known in March, 6 weeks before the $800 million offer, 2 weeks before he skipped her defense for an account that didn't exist. 5 months into Victoria, Ethan Carter had sat at a desk in Midtown with a file in front of him that had his own wife's name on the cover. And he had ticked a box, acknowledging it, and he had signed a waiver saying it wouldn't affect his judgment. And then he had written 1,100 words with no numbers in them, recommending that the largest biotech firm in America not waste its time. He hadn't failed to recognize her. He'd recognized her, and then he'd written her off in 3 paragraphs, and then he'd gone home and eaten dinner across from her and asked how the mice were. Dr. Bennett, Blackwell said, you've gone somewhere. Mr. Blackwell. Her voice came out perfectly level, which frightened her more than anything else that day. What's the reviewer's name? On the memo, I don't know. Marcus. Do we have the full engagement letter? I have it, said Blue Tie. Don't, Marcus said suddenly. Olivia, don't. She turned and looked at him. And Marcus Reyes, who had known her for 2 years and had never once in that time seen her face do what it was doing, said very quietly, you're at 12:41. You're 11 minutes from signing the biggest deal of your life. Whatever's on that page is going to be on that page at 1 o'clock. It'll still be there at 6. Sign first. Marcus, sign first, he said. Please. I have watched you build this out of nothing, and I am asking you as the only person in this room who has read every page of it, do not let him take this from you twice in 1 day. And that landed, because it was true. Olivia closed the folder. Okay, she said. Okay. She looked up at Blackwell. Where were we him reps, said Blue Tie. Then read them. At 12:44, Marcus's phone lit up again, and this time hers did too, and hers was face up. Ethan Carter. They both looked at it. It buzzed out. 4 seconds later, it started again. Ethan Carter. "He knows," Marcus said. "Yeah." Blackwell's assistant came through the door at that exact moment, walked the length of the room without a word, and set a piece of paper in front of him, and Julian Blackwell read it and said, "It's out. Reuters 1243. Bennett Biosolutions nears $800 million sale to Chimera Biotech sources say." The room made a sound, a collective exhale. Olivia's phone buzzed a third time. "Turn it off," Marcus said. "No." "Olivia, I want to see it," she said. The call died and a text came in. "Olivia, call me right now." Then, 19 seconds later, "Olivia, this is a joke, right?" Then 40 seconds after that, and this was the one she'd remember at 2 in the morning for the next year. Okay, listen, don't sign anything until we talk. I'm serious, do not sign anything. This is community property. I'm not being a jerk, I'm protecting both of us here. Olivia read it twice. "Both of us," she said out loud. "Don't," Marcus said. "He said both of us." "Olivia, I need you at this table." "I'm at the table." And she was. That was the thing. She was perfectly calm. Her voice was steady, and her hands were steady. And there was something happening in her chest that she couldn't identify and would only later be able to name, which was grief arriving late and in the wrong room. "Marcus, he thinks he's protecting me. Right now, in this actual minute. He's in a cab somewhere and he genuinely believes he's the responsible one." "I know. How does a person do that?" "I don't know," Marcus said. "I've been a divorce-adjacent lawyer for 19 years, and I have never once figured it out." The phone buzzed again. "Where are you? Are you at Chimera?" "Olivia, I swear to God." Then, "I'm sorry about this morning. That was wrong, and I knew it when I did it, and I did it anyway, and I'm sorry. Please just call me, please." And Olivia turned the phone face down. She'd waited 4 months for that sentence, not the money one. That one. That was wrong, and I knew it when I did it, and I did it anyway. It was in its way the second true thing he'd said all day. And it had cost him nothing to say at 12:47, and it would have cost him everything to say at 9 o'clock, and that was the entire man right there in the space between 2 timestamps. "Dr. Bennett," Blue Tie said. "Rep 31. Are we good?" "We're good. Then I'll get the execution copies." At 12:49, Marcus leaned over and put his mouth 6 inches from her ear. "Listen to me," he said. "The courthouse is 9 blocks from here. If he's in a cab, if he had a lawyer on retainer, if he moved the second the wire hit, best case for him is he's filing a notice of withdrawal at about 1:15. We have 26 minutes. But Olivia, I need to say this to you as your attorney and not your friend. If you want to stop, we stop." She turned her head. "What?" "There's a version of this where you don't sign today," Marcus said. "You wait 90 days. The divorce clears the reps clean, no clock, no risk, and you sleep. Chimera doesn't walk. They've been in this for 6 weeks, and Blackwell just told a room full of his own executives that he paid full ask on a memo that said, 'Don't. He's not walking.'" He held her eyes. "You don't have to win it today. You can just win it." Olivia looked down the table. "Marcus," she said, "do you know what he said to me this morning?" "You told me." "No, the other thing, the last thing. He was in the doorway, and he said you'll always land somewhere. Get a normal job. Take a year." Her jaw moved once. "He gave me a year, Marcus, like it was his to give." "Olivia, I've been operating on his calendar for 7 years," she said. "Every single thing I've ever done, I've done in a window he approved of. And you're sitting here telling me to take 90 days. I'm telling you it's safer." "I know." She stood up. "Get the pages." They put the execution copies in front of her at 12:52. There were 4 of them, and they were thick, and the last page had a line on it with her name printed underneath in 11-point type, and next to the line was a small box for the time. She picked up the pen, and her hand stopped, not from fear. She checked. She actually checked the way she'd check an instrument running down her own body looking for the malfunction, and it wasn't fear, and it wasn't doubt. And then she found it, and it was so stupid and so human that it almost broke her. She wanted to tell him. That was it. That was the thing. 26 months of midnight to 4 in the morning, 16 patents a company built in a closet behind a row of cardigans, and the woman about to sign it away for $800 million had buried in the absolute basement of herself. One small animal impulse, and it was to turn around and say, Look what I did. Are you proud of me?" At the man who'd written her off in 3 paragraphs. Olivia Bennett sat with a pen in her hand and understood that this was what he'd actually taken from her. Not 7 years, not $400 million. He'd installed something in her, some small, hungry thing that turned around at every single victory of her life, looking for a face that was never going to give her what she wanted, and it was going to be in there for a long time, and no contract on earth was going to sign it away. "Dr. Bennett," Blackwell said. She looked up. "I'm here," she said, and she signed it. She signed all 4 copies, and the man in the blue tie wrote the time in the little box, and he wrote 12:54 p.m., and Olivia watched him do it, and the entire room started applauding. 9 people, standing up, in a conference room on the 39th floor. Julian Blackwell walked the entire length of that table, which she was later told he had not done for anyone in 11 years, and he put out his hand. "Dr. Bennett," he said. She shook it. "Now," Blackwell said, still holding her hand, "whose initials are on my memo?" Olivia looked at him. "Ask me at 6, she said. "I'm asking now." "Mr. Blackwell, I just signed. You've got what you paid for." "Dr. Bennett?" He let go of her hand. "There is a document in my building prepared by a vendor I have paid roughly $9 million over 4 years, and it contains a conflicts disclosure. I watched you read page 2. I have been watching people read pages for 30 years, and I know what page 2 did to your face." His voice didn't rise at all. "So I'll ask you once more, and then I'll ask Haller and Voss, and I promise you they'll answer faster and worse." Olivia opened the folder. She turned it around and slid it down the table, and it stopped in front of him. Julian Blackwell read 9 words in blue ink. He read them twice. Then he set the folder down very gently, and he stood there for a moment with both hands on the table, and when he finally spoke, his voice had changed into something Olivia had not heard from him all day. "Your husband," he said. "Yes." "Your husband ran diligence on your company." "Yes." "He disclosed it. He checked the box. He signed a waiver." Blackwell picked the page up and put it back down. "And then he wrote 1,100 words telling me his wife had no commercial instinct." "Yes." "Did he tell you?" "No." Blackwell was quiet for a long moment. "Dr. Bennett," he said, "I want to make sure you understand what's on that page. That is not a bad marriage. That is a conflicted reviewer signing a waiver and rendering a knowingly compromised opinion to a paying client on a 9-figure transaction. That's not sad. That's actionable. Haller and Voss is a regulated advisory. I have an engagement letter, an indemnity, and a general counsel who eats glass. I know. Do you want it?" And Olivia Bennett, who had signed away her company 11 minutes earlier and had not yet eaten anything in 29 hours, stood in a conference room on the 39th floor and heard herself say the truest thing she'd said all day. "I don't know yet," she said. The elevator came at 1:06. Marcus rode down with her and didn't say a word until the 11th floor when he said, "You're going to have about 400 phone calls tonight." "I know. And Olivia, one more thing and then I'll shut up." He watched the numbers fall. He'll get to the courthouse. He might already be there. He's going to try to withdraw that petition, and his lawyer is going to tell him it doesn't matter, and he's not going to believe her, and he's going to make her try anyway, and it'll take him about 6 hours to understand that the $400 million stopped existing at 12:54, and there is no version of the next 12 months in which he gets it back. "Okay. He's going to call you tonight, and he's not going to be angry." Marcus turned and looked at her. "That's what I need you ready for. He's going to be sweet. He's going to be the man from the first year, and it's going to be very, very convincing because he'll mean it." The doors opened on the lobby. Her phone was in her hand, and it had 41 missed calls on it, and she was looking at that number at the sheer arithmetic of a man who had not called her once during her dissertation defense when the screen changed and a new message came in. "I'm downstairs." Marcus saw it before she did because he was reading over her shoulder, which he would apologize for later and not mean. "Don't," he said. "He's downstairs." He's in a lobby with 41 missed calls and no leverage. That's not a man. That's a chemical reaction. Olivia, listen to me. You have signed. You have a contract. You have nothing to gain from the next 4 minutes and everything to lose. Because whatever he says in that lobby, you are going to carry around in your head for a year. The elevator doors were open. Neither of them had moved. Marcus. I'm asking. He's my husband, Olivia said, and then heard it and closed her eyes. He was my husband. 7 years. I'm not going to walk past him. Yes, you are. That's exactly what you're going to do. That's the entire point. Why? Because you don't owe him a scene, Marcus said. You've given that man 7 years of explanations. You're not required to give him a closing statement. Olivia stepped out of the elevator. He was standing by the security desk at 1:07 in the afternoon, and the first thing she noticed, the very first thing, was that he'd fixed his tie. He'd been in a cab. He'd watched his life detonate on a phone screen at 12:43. And somewhere in the 9 blocks between wherever he'd been and where he was standing, Ethan Carter had looked in a mirror and fixed his tie. Olivia, he said. She stopped 6 feet away. Hi. You look. He stopped. He started again. You look incredible. And there it was, 4 seconds in. That's what you want to lead with, she said. No, I just... He laughed, and it came out wrong, high and thin. I've never seen that suit. No. Is it new? It's 11 months old, Olivia said. It's been hanging in the closet next to the coats, the one on the left. Something passed over his face. She watched him do the math and lose. Can we sit down, he said. No. Olivia, please. This isn't... He pressed the heel of his hand against his forehead. I'm not here to fight. I swear to God. I'm here because I read something on my phone in the back of a cab, and I had to pull over and get out because I thought I was going to be sick. Okay. I heard you, she said. That's what okay means. Marcus had positioned himself 4 feet to her left, close enough to be a witness, far enough to be furniture. Ethan looked at him. Who's this? My attorney. Your attorney. Ethan's mouth did something. Right, of course. Great. So this is a deposition. This is a lobby, Marcus said pleasantly. Ethan, Olivia said, what do you want? And he took a breath, and Olivia watched him reach for the first-year version of himself, the one Marcus had warned her about 11 floors up, and she saw him find it, and it was worse than she'd expected because it wasn't even a performance. He didn't have to fake it. It was in there. It had always been in there. That was the tragedy of Ethan Carter in a single lobby at 1:08 in the afternoon. The good man existed. He just never showed up on time. I want to say I'm sorry, he said. Okay. Not for thee. He gestured vaguely at the ceiling at the building at $800 million. Not for this. For this morning. Olivia, I have been going over it in the cab over and over, and I genuinely cannot explain to you what I was thinking. It's like watching somebody else. It wasn't somebody else. I know. It was you. At 8:47 you filed. At 9 you told me. At 9:20 you said you didn't want to sit in a folding chair and clap for me. He flinched. You remember saying that? She said. It wasn't a question. Every word. Then don't tell me it's like watching somebody else. Watching somebody else is what you do when you want to be sad about a thing you did instead of responsible for it. Ethan's jaw set. You know what, he said. This is exactly what I meant. There it is. No, listen to me. This is what I meant this morning. You don't argue, you diagnose. I say I'm sorry, and you hand me a chart. His voice was rising, and he pulled it back down visibly with effort. I'm not doing this. I'm not. Olivia, I came here to say one thing, and then I'll go. Okay, one thing. Say it. Why didn't you tell me? And there it was. The actual question, 60 seconds in under all of it. You want to talk about why I didn't tell you, Olivia said. $800 million, Olivia. You want to have that conversation. Today. You. 2 years. It came out of him like something breaking. 2 years. I sat across from you at dinner. I asked about your day. Every night. I asked and you said fine, and you said long day at the lab, and you looked me in the face and you lied. Every night for 2 years. Yes, Olivia said. I did. That stopped him cold. He'd been braced for a fight. You did, he repeated. I lied to you every single day for 2 years. I'd get off a call with a fund in Zurich at 11 at night and walk into the living room and tell you a machine broke. Her voice was completely level. You're right. That's true. I'm not going to argue about it. Then why? Because of your face, Olivia said. My what? In 2021, October, they passed you over for the Prescott seat and gave it to Danny Vogel, and you came home and you sat on the edge of the bed with your shoes still on for 40 minutes, and you didn't say a word. She watched him, and I stood in the doorway and I looked at your face and I thought I can never let him see me win. Ethan didn't move. That's it, she said. That's the whole answer. That's 2 years. I looked at my husband on the worst night of his career, and instead of thinking I'll hold him up, I thought I'll hide. That's not. His voice cracked. That's not fair. That's not one night. You're taking one night, and it wasn't one night, Ethan. It was one night that told me the rule, and then I obeyed the rule for 2 years, and I called it love, and it wasn't. It was fear. I figured that out this morning at about 10 o'clock, standing in front of a closet. So it's my fault. No, Olivia said. That's the part you're not going to like. It was mine. I made that choice. You didn't put a gun to my head. I decided you were too small to hold my life, and then I never gave you the chance to prove me wrong, and I've been carrying that around all day like a stone in my shoe. Ethan stared at her. Then give me the chance, he said. What? Give me the chance. He took a step forward and Marcus moved and Ethan stopped, hands up. No. Listen, you just said it. You said you never gave me the chance. So give it to me. Right now. Ethan. I'm serious. And he was. That was the horror of it. He was completely, transparently, humiliatingly serious. And his eyes were wet, and Olivia Bennett stood in a marble lobby and watched a man she'd loved for 7 years turn the truest sentence she'd said all year into a door handle. You want to try again? She said. I want to try, yes, God, yes. At 1:09. What? It's 1:09 in the afternoon, Olivia said. The wire went out at 12:43. You want to try again 26 minutes after you found out what I'm worth. That's not what this is. Ethan, that is not what this is. Then here's a question, she said, and she felt Marcus go rigid beside her, and she did it anyway. If it had been $8,000, would you be in this lobby? Silence. Would you be standing here at 1:09 in the afternoon with your tie fixed? Olivia said. If the headline had said, Bennett Biosolutions sells for $8,000, that's a stupid question. It's the only question. You can't ask me a hypothetical and then convict me on it, Ethan said, and his voice had gone ragged. That's rigged. You've rigged it so anything I say is. Say yes. What? Just say yes, Olivia said. Say yes. Olivia, I'd be here. Lie to me. I've lied to you for 2 years. I'm giving you 1. Say yes and I'll take it and we can both walk out of here with something. And Ethan Carter opened his mouth, and nothing came out. It went on for about 3 seconds, and it was the longest 3 seconds of the entire day. And afterward, Olivia would think that this right here was the actual end of her marriage, not the envelope, not 847. A man in a lobby who couldn't get one word out of his mouth, even when she'd written it for him and handed it over. That's what I thought, she said quietly. Olivia. I'm not angry, Ethan. I want you to hear that. I'm not. And she wasn't, and that was the strangest thing about it. I just want to go find my mother. She's been sitting in a hotel lobby in a blue dress since 11 o'clock, and nobody's taken her to lunch. She turned. Halloran Voss, he said. Olivia stopped. She stood with her back to him for 2 full seconds. Then she turned around, and Ethan Carter saw something come into his wife's face that he had never seen in 7 years, and he took a step back before he knew he'd done it. Say that again, she said. I know they were in it. He was talking fast now, and there was something else underneath it, something scrambling. I know Chimera used them. I have people over there. Olivia, whatever's in that memo, I need you to understand the context. It was March. Everything was. You want to tell me about the memo? I want to explain the memo. Ethan. Her voice was so calm it frightened Marcus. "What's on page 2? He went white, that fast. She watched the blood leave a man's face in real time at 1:11 in the afternoon. "There's no page 2, he said. "There's a conflicts sheet." "Olivia." "There's 4 boxes, and you checked the 4th one yes, and you wrote 9 words in blue ink." Her hands were perfectly still at her sides. "Subject's founder is my spouse. No material influence." Waved. Ethan said nothing. "You knew," Olivia said. "In March. You had my company on your desk in March 6 weeks before they offered $800 million, and you knew exactly whose it was, and you signed a waiver saying it wouldn't affect your judgment, and then you wrote 1,100 words with no numbers in them, telling the largest biotech firm in America not to waste their time. That's not. You wrote that I had no commercial instinct." Olivia. "And then you came home," she said, "and you ate dinner across from me, and you asked me how the mice were." The lobby was very quiet. 2 people at the security desk had stopped pretending to work. "You told me you couldn't come to my defense because of the Hartley account," Olivia said. "There is no Hartley account. March 4th was a Tuesday. My defense was March 6th. Ethan's mouth moved. "I killed it," he said. Marcus said, "Ethan, don't." "No, she's she." Ethan's hands were shaking. "She already knows. She's already got it. What's the point?" He looked at Olivia, and his eyes were red and wild. "I killed it. Okay? Is that what you want? I sat there with your file, and I read the science, and I didn't understand half of it. And I called a guy at Columbia, and he said it was real. He said it was the real thing. Olivia, he said your name like I was supposed to know who you were. And I wrote the memo." His voice broke apart. "I wrote it in 40 minutes. I didn't put numbers in it because there weren't any numbers that helped me. I wrote 3 paragraphs of adjectives, and I signed it, and I sent it, and I went home, and I sat across from you at dinner, and you said long day at the lab, and I said, 'That's nice, honey.'" Olivia didn't move. "Why?" she said. "Because it was going to be yours." And it came out of him at a volume that turned every head in that lobby, and Ethan Carter, senior executive, a man who had never once raised his voice in a professional building, stood in the middle of a marble floor and finally told the truth. Because it was going to be yours, and it was going to be huge, and I was going to be the guy standing next to it for the rest of my life. Every dinner, every party, every single room for 40 years. I was going to be Olivia Bennett's husband, and I couldn't. His face was wrecked. "I couldn't do it. I couldn't do 40 years of it, so I killed it. And then it didn't die." Nobody said anything. "It didn't die," Ethan said, and he laughed, and it was a terrible sound. "I put a bullet in it in March, and Blackwell bought it anyway. He bought it anyway. He read my memo, and he bought it anyway. Do you understand what that means? He didn't just ignore me. He read 1,100 words I wrote, and he decided the guy who wrote them was an idiot, and he was right, and I have to live in that." Olivia looked at him for a long time. "Ethan," she said, "do you know what the worst part is?" "What?" "You were right." "What?" "About the 40 years," she said. "You'd have been Olivia Bennett's husband, at every dinner, for the rest of your life." Her voice was almost gentle. "And I would have loved you the whole time. I'd have introduced you first. I'd have made sure they said your name before mine in every room we ever walked into, because that's what I'd been doing already for free for 7 years, and I'd have done it for 40 more, and never once resented it." Ethan made a sound. "That was the offer?" Olivia said. "That was on the table the whole time, and you looked at it and you couldn't bear it, and I need you to know that you didn't lose $400 million this morning. You lost it in March in 40 minutes at a desk with a pen." She turned to go. "What are you going to do?" he said. She stopped. "Blackwell knows," Ethan said. "Doesn't he? He knows. That's why you asked about page 2. He's seen it." He was breathing like he'd run there. Olivia, look at me. Halloran Voss has an indemnity with Chimera. If he pushes this, if his GC pushes this, they're going to hand him a name, and it's going to be mine, and I'm not talking about my job. I'm talking about a license. I'm talking about... Ethan, please. And there it was at 1:14 in the afternoon. The word. The one she'd waited 7 years for, and it had shown up for a career. He asked me if I wanted it. Olivia said. "What did you say?" "I said I didn't know." She left him standing there. She would think about that later, over and over at 2 a.m, that she'd had the chance to say something enormous, and instead she'd said 4 true words and walked out through a revolving door into the afternoon. Her mother was in the hotel lobby at 141, still in the blue dress, and she stood up when Olivia came through the door and didn't ask a single question. She just opened her arms. Olivia Bennett, who had not cried at a divorce or a diligence memo or a signature, cried for 11 minutes in a Marriott lobby in Midtown at 1:45 in the afternoon. "I sold it," she said into her mother's shoulder. "I know, baby. You know." "It's on the television," Diane said. "It's on the television in the bar, Olivia. Your father's been sitting in there for 20 minutes buying drinks for strangers." Ray Bennett called Julian Blackwell's assistant a liar at 2:20 that afternoon because when the man came out to the hotel to hand-deliver a signed copy, Ray thought it was a scam. Blackwell called her at 6:15. "Dr. Bennett?" "Mr. Blackwell, my general counsel has read page 211 times, and he has developed a facial tic." A pause. "Halloran Voss has been notified. Their managing partner called me personally at 5. He was extremely calm, which I've always found is how you can tell." Olivia sat down on the edge of a hotel bed. "What happens?" she said. "That depends entirely on you." Blackwell's voice was flat and careful. "Chimera has a claim. It's mine, it's institutional, and I'll pursue it or not on business grounds. And frankly, the business grounds say pursue. Because if I let a vendor hand me a compromised opinion on a 9-figure deal, every vendor I use learns something today." "Okay. But there's a personal piece, and that piece is yours, and I don't want it," Blackwell said. "So I'm going to ask you a question, Dr. Bennett, and then I'm going to do whatever you say, and I want you to understand that I've never done that before, and I'm not likely to do it again. Ask, do you want him ruined?" Olivia sat in a hotel room with her shoes off and $800 million and her mother's blue dress hanging on the bathroom door. "Can I ask you something first?" she said. "Go ahead." "If I say no, if I say leave him alone, does he keep doing it?" The silence on the line lasted 4 seconds. "Yes," Blackwell said. "Say more." "Dr. Bennett, I'm 61 years old. I've watched about a dozen of these. A man who signs a conflicts waiver and then writes what he wrote isn't a man who had one bad afternoon. He's a man who found out that a pen works." Blackwell's voice didn't change at all. "He'll do it again. Not to you, to someone else. Some 29-year-old with a good molecule and no lawyer, and she'll never know why the money didn't come, and she'll quit, and she'll teach high school chemistry, and she'll be fine, and the world will just quietly not get the thing she was building." Olivia closed her eyes. "That's not fair," she said. "No," Blackwell agreed. "It's just true. Those are different. You're putting a stranger in the room. There's always a stranger in the room, Dr. Bennett. That's what this job is." Olivia sat in the dark for a long moment. "I don't want him ruined," she said. "Understood." "I'm not finished." She opened her eyes. "I don't want him ruined. That's not the same as protected. Mr. Blackwell, I've spent 7 years standing between that man and every consequence he ever earned. I made his excuses at Thanksgiving. I covered for him with his own mother. I told his boss he was sick once when he wasn't." Her voice was steady. "I'm not doing it anymore, that's all. I'm just not doing it anymore." "So what would you like me to do?" "Nothing," Olivia said. "Nothing. Do exactly what you would have done if I'd never been married to him. Run it as a business matter. Send it to your general counsel. Let him do his job, and don't take 1 single ounce of it off the top because it's my ex-husband." She stood up. "I'm not asking you to hurt him, Mr. Blackwell. I'm asking you to stop making an exception because I've been the exception for 7 years, and it turns out that's the thing that broke us both." There was a long pause. "Dr. Bennett," Blackwell said, "I've been trying all day to figure out what I bought. And I think I've got it now," he said, and hung up. Halloran Voss put Ethan Carter on administrative leave at 9:40 the following Tuesday. Not because of Olivia, Because their managing partner, a man named Dale Halloran, who had never met either of them, opened a conflicts file at 7 in the morning and read 9 words in blue ink and understood in about 4 seconds that his firm's entire product was trust, and a man in his shop had sold some. The internal review took 9 days. It found the waiver, it found the memo, and then because internal reviews are like autopsies and they never stop at the thing that killed you, it found the rest. Because it turned out that a man who'd learned a pen works had been busy. Marcus called her about it on a Thursday in June. "You're going to want to sit down." "Marcus, I've sat down for you twice this month and I'm running out of chairs." "Halloran's review went 18 months back," he said. "Standard when they find one. They pull everything the reviewer touched. And there's an expense pattern." Paper shuffling. "Olivia, I'm not going to editorialize. I'm going to read you the categories. Client development, 11,400. Off-site strategy sessions, 9,000. Conference travel, 16,200, including a 4-day trip to Napa in January for a conference that, and I want to be precise here, did not occur." Olivia was quiet. "Victoria works at a firm in Napa," she said. "Victoria worked at a firm in Napa," Marcus said. "She was let go on the 22nd. "Marcus, there's more, and this is the part I'm calling about." His voice changed. "Olivia, in November, he expensed a hotel in Boston. $1,400. 2 nights. Olivia's hand went to her mouth. "November what?" she said. "The 8th and 9th. She sat down on the floor of her own kitchen. Because on November 8th, she had flown to Boston to pitch a fund at 8 o'clock in the morning. She'd taken a 5 a.m. flight because she couldn't afford the hotel. She'd changed into her interview clothes in an airport bathroom and pitched a room of men on 4 hours of sleep and flown home the same night, and she'd walked into her apartment at 11:30, and Ethan had been on the couch and he'd said long day at the lab, and she'd said yes. He'd been in Boston. He had been in a $1,400 hotel room in the same city on the same night on his firm's money while his wife changed clothes in a bathroom at Logan because she was saving $400 for a company he'd already decided to kill. "Olivia," Marcus said, "are you there?" "Yeah." "Do you want me to stop?" "No." She wiped her face. "Keep going." "That's it. That's the whole file. It's $48,000 over 18 months, which, and I want you to hear this is nothing. It's a rounding error. Halloran Voss bills that in a morning." He paused. "That's what I can't get past. He didn't do it for the money. $48,000 over 18 months isn't theft, Olivia. It's decoration." "I know," she said. "How do you know?" "Because that's what he was doing with the memo, too." She bought into his firm in October, and it was not revenge whatever the papers said afterward, and it was not a plan. It was Blackwell. He called her on a Tuesday and said, "Dr. Bennett, I'm going to tell you about an opportunity, and I need you to hear the entire thing before you react." "Julian." "Cornerstone Financial Consulting, your husband's old shop." "Ex-husband." "Ex-husband's old shop. They've been circling the drain since March. They lost Prescott. They lost 2 more after that, and their managing partners are looking for capital and a name." He let that sit. "Chimera does this. We take positions in advisory firms in our vertical. It's not sentiment. It's supply chain. I've been looking at Cornerstone for 2 years, and the price has never been better, and the reason the price has never been better has nothing to do with you." "Julian, let me finish. You'd come in through the fund, 41%. It's a good deal on the numbers alone, and I'd do it whether you existed or not." Pause. "But you do exist. So I'm telling you first, and if you say no, I'll do it without you, and you'll never hear about it again." Olivia stood in her lab at 11 o'clock at night with a $40 sensor in her hand. "Does he still work there?" she said. "He was terminated by Halloran Voss in June. Cornerstone rehired him in August at about 60% of his old package because one of the managing partners is a friend of his and thought he'd been treated unfairly. So he's there. He's there. And if I come in at 41%, then you're the largest single shareholder in the company," Blackwell said, "and you get a board seat. And Dr. Bennett, I'm going to say the next part very plainly, because I don't want you to walk into it blind. If you do this at some point in the next 6 months, you are going to be sitting in a room where that man's employment is on an agenda, and you are going to have to decide whether you're a shareholder or an ex-wife, and everyone in that room will be watching to find out which." Olivia was quiet for a long time. "Julian," she said, "can I tell you what I keep thinking about? Please." "The stranger." "What?" "The one you put in the room in May, the 29-year-old with the good molecule." She set the sensor down. "Cornerstone has 42 employees, half of them are under 35, and a man who learned that a pen works is sitting in there right now with a title and a mentorship program." Blackwell said nothing. "Buy it," Olivia said. The board meeting was on a Thursday in January, 8 months, and 1 week after the envelope. Ethan Carter walked into that conference room at 9:02 in the morning, expecting a restructuring discussion. He'd been told there'd be a new investor. He'd been told to expect changes. He'd worn the suit. And Olivia Bennett was sitting at the head of the table. He stopped in the doorway. 41 people watched a man stop in a doorway, and not one of them made a sound. And Ethan Carter stood there with his hand still on the door and looked down the length of a room at his wife. "Sit down, Ethan," Olivia said. "We've got a lot to get through." He didn't sit down. That was the first thing. 41 people watched Ethan Carter stand in a doorway at 9:02 in the morning with his hand on the frame, and he didn't move. And the room did the thing rooms do, which is get very interested in the tabletop. "Ethan," Olivia said, "there's a chair." "Is this a joke?" "No." "Is somebody filming this?" "Ethan, there are 41 people in this room and 39 of them have a mortgage," she said. "Sit down." He sat down. He sat in the last chair at the far end, which was the only one open, and Olivia understood immediately that he'd been placed there by whoever built the seating chart, and that whoever built it had known exactly what they were doing, and she made a note to find out who. Dale Pruitt, the managing partner, cleared his throat. "So," he said, "everybody, this is Dr. Olivia Bennett. As of December 19th, the Chimera Strategic Fund holds 41% of Cornerstone, which makes Dr. Bennett our largest single shareholder and a member of this board." Somebody's phone buzzed. Nobody laughed. "Thank you, Dale," Olivia said. "I'm going to talk for 4 minutes and then we're going to open it up, and I want you to actually open it up because I have been on the other side of this table and I know what it feels like when a new owner says any questions and means please don't." That got a small sound out of somebody near the middle. "Here's where we are," she said. "This firm has lost 4 mandates in 11 months. Revenue's down 31%. You've had 2 rounds of quiet attrition, which is the kind where nobody's fired, but the good people leave anyway, and if nothing changes, you have about 14 months of runway." She let it sit. "That's not a threat. That's a spreadsheet. Dale gave me the same one in November, and it's why the price was what it was." "What's the plan?" someone asked. A woman, early 30s, third seat down. "What's your name?" "Reese Ibarra, Senior Associate." "The plan is that I'm not cutting headcount," Olivia said. "Not one." The room reacted. She'd expected it. It still surprised her how physical it was, 41 people exhaling at once. "I'm not being generous," she said. "This firm's product is judgment. That's it. You don't make anything. You don't own anything. Somebody pays you $400,000 to look at a company and tell them the truth, and if you fire half the people, the remaining half do twice the looking in the same hours, and the judgment gets worse, and then you're a firm that sells judgment badly." She looked around. "So no cuts. But I want to be honest with you about what does change, and it changes today." "Which is conflicts," Olivia said. And at the far end of the table, Ethan Carter stopped breathing. Nobody noticed. Not one person. That was the thing that stayed with her afterward, that in a room of 41 people, the single most important moment of a man's life happened in total privacy. "Cornerstone's conflicts protocol is a checkbox," Olivia said. 4 questions, self-reported, self-waived. If you disclose, you sign a line that says, "No material influence," and then you go do the work anyway. Nobody reviews it. Nobody countersigns it. There's a file cabinet in the 4th floor hallway with 2 years of them in it. And I asked Dale who reads that cabinet, and he said honestly nobody. "That's industry standard," said a man near Ethan. "I know it is," Olivia said. "That's the problem." "Dr. Bennett, with respect, every advisory in this city runs it that way." "And how's the city doing?" she said. Somebody laughed. It was quick and startled, and it got strangled immediately, and Olivia let it go by. "Starting Monday, a disclosure isn't self-waived," she said. "It goes to a two-person review outside the engagement team, and it's countersigned. And if the review says step off, you step off, and nobody's compensation moves because of it. Not $1. If you disclose a conflict and lose the mandate, you get paid exactly what you'd have gotten." She looked directly at Reese Ibarra. "That's the whole reform. That's it. I'm not making it harder, to be honest. I'm making it free." "Why?" Reese said. And Olivia thought about that for a second. "Because I read a memo once," she said. "At 9:31, they got to the third item on the agenda, and Dale Pruitt said the words personnel matters, and every head in that room turned at once, and Ethan Carter looked like a man in a chair on a road." "Dale," Olivia said, "before you read that." "Dr. Bennett, I'm recusing." Dale blinked. "You're what?" "I'm recusing from item 3, Olivia said, and she pushed her chair back and stood up. "There's a name on it, and I was married to it for 7 years. That's a personal, familial, and financial relationship with the subject of the matter, which is question 4 on our own form, and I'm not going to write a new conflicts policy at 9:04 and violate it at 9:31. Nobody moved. "Olivia," Dale said quietly, "you own 41%. Then I'll own it in the hallway." She walked the length of that table, and she did not look at Ethan when she passed him, and she was almost at the door when he said her name. "Olivia." She stopped. "Don't," he said. 41 people. Total silence. "Don't leave," Ethan said. His voice was wrecked and quiet, and it carried anyway. "Just please, if you're going to do it, do it. Don't make somebody else do it and stand in the hallway and be the good one." Olivia turned around, and she felt in that moment an urge so strong it frightened her to walk back and sit down and take the meeting and say the sentence herself. She'd earned it. 8 months of 2 in the morning and a stone in her shoe and a man in a lobby who couldn't say one word she'd written for him. She could have it, right now. 41 witnesses. "Ethan," she said, "you think I'm doing this to you, aren't you?" "I'm doing it in front of you," Olivia said. "Those aren't the same, and it's going to take you about a year to understand the difference." She walked out. She stood in the hallway for 19 minutes. There was a window at the end of it, and a water cooler that made a noise like a swallow every 40 seconds, and Olivia Bennett stood there in a charcoal suit and counted them because apparently that was still what she did. At minute 6, she thought they're reading the expense file. At minute 11, he's explaining Napa. At minute 14, a woman came out of the door and walked past her and stopped and turned around, and it was Reese Ibarra. "Dr. Bennett, you should be in there. I asked to be excused. I get sick around this stuff." She was holding a coffee she wasn't drinking. "Can I say something?" "Go ahead." 2 years ago, I found something," Reese said, "in a file. A partner had signed off on a thing he shouldn't have, and I had it. I had the actual page, and I took it to my mentor, and he took me to lunch, and he was very kind, and by the end of lunch, I decided I'd misread it." She was looking at the carpet. "I hadn't misread it." Olivia's chest went cold. "Who was your mentor?" she said. Reese didn't answer. "Reese, he's very good at lunch," Reese said, and the water cooler swallowed. At minute 19, the door opened. Ethan Carter came out of that room, and he was still holding a folder, which was somehow the worst part, and he walked into the hallway and saw his wife standing at the window and stopped. "They took my license referral," he said. "Okay. I'm done, not just here. Nobody in this business hires a guy with a Halloran finding and a cornerstone termination in the same 12 months. He laughed, and it broke. "Dale did it. Dale, Olivia. He was at our wedding." "I know. He cried at our wedding." "I know Ethan." "So that's it," he said. "You win." And Olivia turned around and looked at him and felt for the first time in 8 months absolutely nothing that she'd been expecting to feel. "Ethan," she said, "I have $400 million a laboratory and a research chair for 48 months that can't be voted out from under me. I'm not standing in a hallway wondering if I won." "Then why are you here?" "Because it's 9:50 in the morning and I have a board meeting." He stared at her. "You didn't do this to me." "No. You bought the whole company and you're telling me it wasn't about me." "Ethan," she said it gently, "that's what I've been trying to tell you for 7 years. Almost nothing was about you. That was never the insult. That was the invitation. He didn't understand. She watched him not understand, and she realized that he was probably never going to, and that this was the actual shape of the thing. Not a courtroom, not a stage, just a man in a hallway who was going to spend the rest of his life certain that he'd been the center of a story he'd only been standing next to. "Victoria left in September," he said. "I'm sorry." "No, you're not." "I am actually," Olivia said. "Not for you, for her. She got a man in the worst year of his life, and she'd been promised the best one." Ethan's face came apart. "Olivia," he said, "can I ask you one thing? One. Was any of it real?" And she thought about it honestly for 4 full seconds, because he deserved 4 seconds and nothing more. 2018, she said. "You drove me to Philadelphia at 4 in the morning because a conference moved and I'd have missed it. You had a client breakfast at 9. You drove 4 hours round trip and went straight in, and you never told anybody." She held his eyes. "That was real. That man was real. I loved him for 7 years. Ethan, I need you to hear this because it's the last true thing I'm ever going to say to you. He existed. That's not the tragedy. The tragedy is he showed up maybe 11 times in 7 years and you were in there the whole time deciding when. Ethan Carter stood in the hallway and cried. She didn't comfort him. That was the hardest thing she did all year, and she'd sold a company and signed a rep and stood on a stage, and the hardest thing was standing 4 feet from a man who was crying and keeping her hands at her sides. "I'm going back in," she said. She sat down at 9:58, and Dale said item 4, and the meeting went another 2 hours, and Olivia Bennett did not think about her ex-husband once during any of it, which was, she'd understand much later, the exact moment the marriage actually ended. Reese Ibarra came to her office in March. "I want the conflicts review job," she said. "It's not a job, it's a rotation. It's 6 hours a month and everyone hates it." "I know." "Reese, it's a career killer. You'll be the person who tells partners no." "I know," Reese said. "That's why I want it." Olivia looked at her for a long moment. "The lunch guy," she said. "Is he still here?" "He's still here." "Does he still take people to lunch?" "He took a first year in January," Reese said. Olivia picked up her phone. "What are you doing?" Reese said. "I'm giving you the rotation," Olivia said, "and then I'm going to sit in on your first review once in the back and say nothing so that every single person in this building understands by Thursday that when you say no, it's mine." Reese Ibarra's eyes went bright and she blinked it away hard. "Why?" she said. And Olivia thought about a hotel room in Boston she couldn't afford, and a bathroom at Logan, and a man on a couch saying long day at the lab, honey. "Because somebody should have done it for me," she said. Bennett Biosolutions filed for its first human trial on a Tuesday in April. It was the same molecule. It was the thing she'd built in a closet behind a row of cardigans from midnight to 4 in the morning, while a man in the next room watched television. Marcus called her that night. "How does it feel?" "Terrifying." "Why?" "Because it works in mice," Olivia said. "And people aren't mice. Marcus, do you know what I've actually done? I've spent 2 years telling everyone it works, and now they're going to put it into a human being and find out." "Olivia, there's a woman in Michigan," she said. "I got a letter. She's 44, and she has the disease, and she read about the deal, and she wrote me a letter with a stamp on it, a physical letter, and she said, 'I'm holding on until you're ready.'" Marcus was quiet. "That's what he was calling mice," Olivia said. The trial read out in November of the following year. 61 patients. Phase 1 safety and dosing, which is not supposed to tell you anything about whether it works. And Olivia knew that. And she'd said it out loud to her team 11 times. And at 6:40 in the morning on a Tuesday, a biostatistician named Priyansh Rao, who had sat next to her at every seminar for 4 years and had clapped loud on a stage in May, called her and couldn't get a sentence out. "Priyansh!" "Olivia. Say it." "It's not supposed to." He was crying. She'd never heard him cry. "Olivia, it's phase 1. It's not supposed to show anything. It's 61 people. There's no power. You can't." "Priyansh, say it." 49 of them responded, he said. Olivia Bennett sat down on the floor of her kitchen for the second time in her life. The woman in Michigan was in the trial. Her name was Deborah Vance. She was 46 by then, and she came to the Innovation Award ceremony 18 months later because Olivia sent a car for her and would not take no. The award was in a hotel ballroom, and Olivia stood backstage at 7:50 in the evening, in the charcoal suit, the same one 11 months old, become 4 years old, and she thought about all the money she had, and all the suits she could have, and how she'd worn this one anyway. Diane Bennett was in the third row in the blue dress. The same one. "Mom, you have 100 dresses." "I bought this one at 3 different stores," Diane said. "It's not done." Ray Bennett, 68 years old, 31 years in a machine shop, stood up when they said his daughter's name and yelled it across a ballroom exactly the way he had at 11:38 in the morning on a Thursday in May, and Olivia found the two of them in the third row before she found the microphone. She spoke for 9 minutes. She didn't mention Ethan. She talked about a sensor that cost $40, and about the closet, and about the first 11 months when there were no investors and no patents, just a woman at a kitchen table at 2 in the morning with a laptop and a hypothesis. And then she said the thing that traveled, the thing that ended up on 100,000 screens and got printed on posters in high school science rooms, and she said it because Deborah Vance was sitting at table 9. "Somebody in your life is going to decide what you're worth," Olivia said. "That's not the dangerous part. The dangerous part is that you'll agree with them. I did. For 7 years I had a number in my head about myself, and I didn't put it there, and the terrible thing about a number somebody else installs in you is that you'll defend it. You'll argue for it. You'll turn down rooms because of it." She looked at the third row. "I want to be very clear about something, because I know how this story gets told. I did not become worth $800 million on a Thursday in May. I was worth it on the Wednesday. I was worth it in the closet. I was worth it at 2 in the morning with a broken machine and nobody watching. The only thing that changed on Thursday was that I stopped waiting for someone to notice. She was quiet for a second. "Nobody's coming to notice," she said. "That's the whole speech. Nobody's coming. You have to walk across the stage anyway." Ethan Carter watched it on his phone. He was living in Hoboken by then in a 1-bedroom, and he'd been out of the industry for 2 years and 8 months, and he was working at a logistics firm in New Jersey doing analysis for $110,000 a year, which was, and he knew this, more money than most people make. He'd stopped telling people about it. That was the change. For the first year, he'd told everybody at every bar, the whole thing, my ex-wife, 800 million, you might have read about it, and he'd watched their faces do something he couldn't stand, and around month 14, he'd stopped. Now he just didn't mention it. He watched the 9 minutes twice, and then he did the thing that he'd been not doing for 2 years and 8 months, which was open a text thread that ended with 4 words from him at 1:14 in the afternoon on a Thursday in May, and he typed for a long time. He wrote 900 words. He wrote about 2018 in Philadelphia. He wrote about the memo. He wrote a sentence that said, "I killed it because it was going to be yours," which she already knew, and a sentence that said, "I have thought about the folding chair every day for 1,000 days," which she didn't. And then he read it back. And Ethan Carter, at 11 o'clock at night in a 1-bedroom in Hoboken, understood something for the first time, and it arrived so quietly that he almost missed it. Every single sentence was about him, 900 words, and not one of them was for her. It was an apology built entirely out of his own suffering, offered to a woman who'd just told a ballroom that nobody was coming, and he was going to send it so that she would write back and say something that made him feel less like what he was. He deleted it. He sat there for a long time, and then he typed 4 words and sent them before he could think about it, and the 4 words were, the speech was true. No apology, no 2018, no memo. Nothing for him. It was the only unselfish thing Ethan Carter did in the entire 7 years, and the 8 that followed, and it took him 1,000 days to find it, and it lasted 4 words. Olivia read it in the back of a car at 11:14 at night. She looked at it for a long time, and she didn't answer, and it wasn't cruelty, and it wasn't strategy, and it wasn't even a decision exactly. It was simply that a car was moving, and her mother was asleep on her shoulder in a blue dress from the third store, and Deborah Vance had hugged her at table 9 and said thank you into her hair, and Olivia Bennett looked at 4 true words from a man in New Jersey and felt finally the thing she'd been waiting 8 years to feel. Nothing. Not hatred, not triumph, not the small, hungry animal in the basement turning around at every victory looking for a face. Nothing. She put the phone in her bag. The thing she'd say afterward, the thing she said in an interview once and never repeated because she saw how it landed, was this: people wanted the story to be about the money. They wanted $800 million and a man who missed it by 4 hours and the delicious arithmetic of a timestamp. 8:47, 12:54. They wanted the folder with his initials in it. They wanted the boardroom. And all of that happened. Every bit of it was true. But Olivia Bennett knew what the story actually was, and it was smaller and worse, and it fit in a sentence. A woman hid herself for 2 years because she was afraid, and a man left anyway. That was it. That was the whole thing. Everything after it was just consequences. Because here's what she understood standing in her lab at 11 o'clock at night with a $40 sensor in her hand, 3 years and 1 week after an envelope landed on a kitchen table with a sound like a coupon. Ethan Carter never had $400 million. Not for 1 second. Not at 8:46. Not in March. He couldn't have held it. The money was never in the room with them because the money was just what the world put on top of a thing she'd already built. And he'd had the thing itself sitting across from him at dinner every night for 7 years, asking about her day. And he'd said, "That's nice, honey." He didn't lose a fortune. He lost a woman who would have introduced him first in every room for 40 years, and he lost her, not because he wasn't rich enough or kind enough or big enough, but because when she finally rose, he couldn't stay in the chair, and she'd have stayed in the chair for him. That was the last thing, the thing she never said in a single interview, the thing she only ever said once to her mother in a car at 11:14 at night. "I'd have sat in that chair for 40 years, Olivia said. "I know, baby," Diane said. "I'd have clapped so loud." "I know." Olivia Bennett was 41 years old when the drug went to market. It carries her name in the literature, and nobody's ever going to say it out loud outside of a conference room, and there are 11,000 people alive who don't know it. And one of them is a woman in Michigan who sends a card every November on the anniversary of a readout. She never remarried, not out of damage. She just got busy and then she got happy, and by the time she noticed she hadn't, it had stopped being a question. And she kept the gray cardigan, the one with the hole in the elbow. The one he'd told her twice made her look like a substitute teacher. It hangs in a closet in a house upstate, next to a charcoal suit she paid $1,100 for, and a cap and gown she wore for 11 seconds. And once a year in May, on the 15th, Olivia Bennett takes the cardigan out and puts it on and sits at a kitchen table with a laptop at 2 in the morning alone for 1 hour and works. Because that's who did it. Not the woman in the suit, not the woman on the stage, not the one in the boardroom with 41 people watching. The one in the cardigan at the kitchen table at 2 in the morning when nobody was coming and nobody was clapping, and there was no reason on earth to keep going. She's the one who was worth $800 million. She always was. And the only thing that ever changed is that one day she stopped waiting for permission to say so out loud.